And I think that was helpful for having these, Clay, Draymond Green, Steph Curry lineups. I think that the synergy there was really, really good. Yes. And that's why I don't think Clay is just like, oh, we could take him out and put in any two guard that could shoot and it would be the same thing. I think that he had some strength that worked perfectly with that group. But I think in a vacuum, he's overrated in terms of his defensive impact.
Courtney Lee or Klay Thompson?
We've taken this a little bit too far.
This is Hot Hand Theory. This is the podcast where we talk about the NBA and break things down from an analytical perspective. As always, I'm your co-host XJ. As always, he is my brilliant co-host Geoff. And today, Geoff is not the only brilliant basketball mind that we have here. We have a very special guest. I want to say if you listen to us, you almost definitely have to know who this person is. You know him from the Strickland, which is a mainstay media outlet in the Knicks community and in the NBA community as a whole. We have ShwinnyPooh with us here. Shwin, thanks so much for joining us and being our very first guest on the Hot Hand Theory podcast. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing well. Happy to be here. Happy to pop your cherry. So there we go. Let's do it.
Yeah,
you always remember your first, I've been listening and I enjoy the pod. I enjoy, Geoff having existential crises about Emmanuel Quickley's minutes load, like every 45 minutes on the pod. So it's always good to listen in on that.
It'll come up at least twice in this episode. So
we're coming. You say that, and we're coming off a game he played 19 minutes. So I guess now it's going to be the only thing in my head as we talk about the Knicks.
There was the first mention. There's two more coming, so 3 times now. But for our listeners, we have a kind of a fun game or exercise we're going to do here with Shwin. But first, we want to just kind of talk some Knicks ball and just get Shwin's overall thoughts on the season. We're 19 games in, close to a quarter of the season has passed. It feels like it flew by. The Knicks are 12-7. They have the 11th best offense and the 5th best defense according to raw offensive and defensive ratings. Shwin, what are your overall thoughts on the team this year?
I did make a joke about Geoff having an existential crisis. Not everything is perfect, obviously. There are things that I think can be improved, but I think people need to relax a little bit. They're 19 games in, right? So you can't win the championship right now. You can't win anything right now. You can win the in-season tournament, which the Knicks maybe they'll do it, but you can't win anything right now. And if you go back to where we were at this exact point last year, 19 games in. I mean, I think all of us were probably, maybe an exaggeration, but I was about ready to blow my brains out watching this team just misallocate minutes and just play bad players. And look, is everything perfect right now? No. Do I think that there's things that Tibbs could shift that would give the Knicks a little bit more of a boost in their lineups and their net rating and blah, blah, blah? Yes, of course I do. But if this is the things that we are worried about right now, we're in a pretty good place. And I think broader, speaking more broadly about the state of the team, the main concerns coming into the season were what? Okay, are we going to be as good defense? Look, can we improve our defense? Okay. Was our offense a fluke, or is this something that's maybe not third best in the league, but it'll be a good offense? Are we too small? Are we going to get killed on the glass? Maybe we underestimated something about Obi Toppin. Are we going to get killed on the glass now? Is the world going to end that we don't have a true backup four, whatever the fuck that means? And I think you look at this team, I think I have this memorized off Basketball Reference, but I think they're 11th in offensive rating. They're 4th in defensive rating. I believe they're 5th or 6th in net rating. They are first in defensive rebound percentage, second in offensive rebound percentage. They are 7th in 3-point percentage as a team, and they are 8th in 3-point attempt rate as a team. What the fuck are we talking about here? This is a really good team, and the best part about this team being as good as it is that there's a ton of scope for just internal improvement. Julius Randle is at a 50.8 true shooting or something right now. He's actually the last 2 games or the first 2 games. One, I thought he's actually played fairly complete basketball games, like which you get those from Julius, and you better win those games. You got to win the complete Julius games. He's played some complete games. He's also just played. He's looked better around the rim. He looks stronger when he's when he's driven. He looks like he's got a little bit more of a burst back. I still don't. The 3-point shooting is still. I mean, he had like 3 air balls from 3 in the first half against Detroit, which was insane. But like even in that game, I thought his work inside the arc was good, and it looks like it's getting back to, he's always going to have these weird stretches where you're like, can you just like stop doing everything for 15 seconds? Like, please pass the ball. Please stop dribbling 75 times. Maybe kick out when you're getting triple teamed. Like, you're always going to have those sequences with them. But those last 2 games, granted, it's not the stiffest competition, Pistons, Raptors. But like, I mean, he did what you want to see him do in those matchups. He dominated in a way that wasn't just like, oh, Julius is like bullying his way to the rim and like getting 15 free throws and just like no, he did do that, but he's also playmaking for others. Thought his decision making was good. So like, there's a lot of scope for improvement from him very specifically. Even with Brunson, yeah, he's on a heater from 3. That 2-point percentage is, I bet you by the end of the year it'll be above 50. I don't even doubt it. I think it'll be. I think he was at 52 last year from 2. 51 or 52. Like, it should be up around that range again this year. I would be surprised if it's not. So I think that's another area of improvement. Like, I mean, I don't know what the hell to expect anymore from RJ Barrett on a week-to-week basis. So we'll see. At some point, he'll probably dial up a 7-game stretch where we're like, is this the leap? And then he probably followed up with a 7-game stretch where you're like, is he insane? So we'll see what happens there. Josh Hart, like, the last 2 games from him have been really good. I think he got off to a slow start this year. Obviously, he didn't have a full training camp. He was dealing with an injury after FIBA. But like, he looked, the last 2 games for him is exactly, that's the guy that we traded for last year. Forget that he's making threes. It's not even about the making threes. It's about how he's playing, the force he's playing with. Like, me and Geoff talked about this before, but like, when he's going good, he brings an intensity and a tempo and like just a force to the game that nobody else in this team really can provide. And like, you've seen that the last couple of games, and it's like, quickly the last couple of games, I actually think he's played well, but he hasn't been like at the forefront of things. Right. But like, we are talking about a team that has had so many ups and downs early on. I can talk about Hartenstein, who I think the last 7-8 games have not been his biggest fan. Not that he's been bad, but I'm just like, I know you can play better than this. But like, you think about how bad of a start Brunson and Randall had. You think about RJ Barrett missed, 5 games in the middle of this whole stretch. And we went from, oh my God, is he our best player, to like right now, I'm like, are you okay? Like, is everything good, or what's going on here? Quentin Grimes has done nothing this year. He's done absolutely nothing. And I imagine that at some point he will do some things, which would be an improvement. And I believe that he will get better. Like, I don't think what is going on with him is that abnormal for young players in the kind of stage of his career that he's in. I just think like his profile, how he plays, he'll be fine. He's just going through a really shitty spot right now. And so you like look at all of this, and DiVincenzo, he's been kind of up and down, and the last couple of games he's went off. He's actually at a 58.6 true shooting now for the year, shooting 43% from 3. Like, the fact that we haven't really had a stretch where everything is kind of like together, and we're 12-7, and every metric that you could look at says this is a team that is a guaranteed playoff team. And I think we would all agree that Tibbs still has stuff that he can definitely iron out and improve on. It's a pretty good spot to be in, all things considered.
It kind of feels like the inverse of 2021, 2022. And I feel like you'll know exactly what I mean by that, Shwin, in the sense of they had a really soft start to the season from a schedule perspective that year. And I remember the vibe around the Knicks was like, man, we needed to be better than what we are at this point in the season because the schedule is about to get impossible. And now it's like everyone agrees that the Knicks had one of the toughest starts to a season you could possibly have from a schedule perspective.
And you factor in travel, back-to-backs, all that stuff.
All that stuff.
Yeah.
December's not getting any easier. They have 12 road games, I think, out of 15, maybe even more. If they lose to, if they lose to Milwaukee, I think they'll get another road game on Thursday. it's not getting any easier. And the Knicks just so far this season are consistently overachieving what we expect. I said to start the season, I would sign up for 5-5. I said that on our very first episode. I would have taken 5-5. 12-7 is a dream after the start, and I just wanted to add that because I couldn't agree more with everything you said.
Yeah, and also like 12-7. Honestly, I'm looking at the schedule and I feel like, man, could be like 14-5. Like there are like a couple games, like that Phoenix game, that Cleveland game. But these are the things, right? This is the long NBA season. You're gonna have games that you're like, what a stupid loss. Even last year, like people forget this. Like, yes, it was a fun season. It was awesome. Obviously, it was like honestly the best, like the most fun I've had being an Knicks fan since fucking 99 or something. But like, I mean, even last year they lost games that were stupid, right? They lost a game to the Hornets. You remember that? Like we had this like epic, like, oh, we beat Miami, we beat Boston, and you come home and it's like you have this listless performance against Charlotte. You had this weird loss to Orlando where like Julius is having a meltdown. Like there was a lot of stuff.
The Dallas and Chicago losses back to back.
Right. Yeah, those were brutal back to back. But like you're going to have stupid, annoying losses over the course of 82 games. It's impossible to avoid that. The fucking Celtics, who we're going to talk about, they lost to the Hornets. They literally lost to the Hornets like before we played them. So like it's a long season. Good teams will lose to bad teams, and that's just the way of the world. But like 19 games in, if I told you before the season you'd be 12-7, I think every Knicks fan would have been like, great. And not just 12-7. Like this is not. You remember that the first Derrick Rose year when we first traded for him, not with Tibbs, but with like Hornacek. But that team started off like 16-13, but they had this insane negative point differential. And so you're just like, oh, like it's going to happen soon. This is going to suck. And it did, right? The end of that season was miserable. This team is the exact opposite. I don't even know. I mean, are they underperforming their Pythag at this point? I feel like they probably are.
I think that they are underperforming it, and their adjusted net rating is plus 3.5. So adjusted for strength of schedule, they'd still be like 6th in the NBA in net rating.
Yeah. So it's just like this.
Basketball Reference has them at 13. Their expected win loss at 13-6.
Yeah, but like, yeah, it just everything about this team feels like on the macro scale feels good. Like now, are there micro things to worry about? Sure. I just feel like, look, I know you weren't saying this quite literally, but like, yes, I like that Emmanuel quickly play more than 19 minutes. Absolutely. I also think like it's reasonable early in a season for a coach who has a new player in Dante DiVincenzo. And like, let's be real, it is a different rotation from what he's ever run in his career, right? Like Tibbs is not used to like, oh, I'm going to sub out RJ first. And then he comes back in with the bench because I don't have a true backup for or whatever. Like this is him actually trying to adapt to a roster that is, I'm sure if you gave him truth serum or like, would you like to have a true backup for? He'd be like, yeah, I can't live without it. But like, this is him trying to figure stuff out. And so like, I'm a little bit more patient and understanding of that because I also feel like he actually has adapted a lot and he has progressed a lot as a coach. And like, I don't know, he earns a lot of credit for me with like how he managed last season. Like I'm totally with you every time you're talking about like, we could do the minutes thing with him and how the rotations and like if you start, you get X minutes. And if you come off the bench, like this is your cap of like, I get all that and I agree with that. But I also just feel like sometimes we get so lost in that micro stuff that like, it's hard sometimes as a fan of any sport, of any team in 2023 to just like enjoy the moment. And I don't know, like I'm watching that Raptors game and I could be annoyed that like DiVincenzo, whatever, not even DiVincenzo, but like Grimes played more than quickly, right? Like I was annoyed about that, but I'm also watching that game and I'm like, it's kind of awesome that he can just like not play quickly and play DiVincenzo. And I'm not super upset about the choice. Like, I would prefer quickly play, but I'm also like, DiVincenzo's on fire, so fuck it. Like that's fine. I just think like we can appreciate where we should try more, myself included for sure. Just to like, this team is really good. They're playing well. When they have games that are playing well, definitely appreciate it. And just like. We're always, I listened to your guys' pod, what was it, last week, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago, where you guys talking about like, oh, Julius Randle, like, what are we going to do with this guy? And I've had those conversations and thought about that forever too. But like, look, I agree with you with what you guys said on that pod. I'm obviously you two know this already, but like at the same time, and I struggle with this for sure, especially with Julius, because he's just such a fucking. I mean, I don't know if any basketball or any athlete has ever challenged me mentally to understand it the way Julius has. But like, it's okay that I think Julius needs to go for us to eventually become a contender, and that I don't necessarily think that we're a contender right now. I think I can still appreciate what this team is, how they're set up for the future, and I can appreciate like what Julius brings to the table right now for this team. Like, he's not a total negative value player. He's not some bum. Like, he's frustrating. His bad times are super loud and very frustrating, and honestly, like, just very, very irritating. But he's been part of like this team's or this franchise's turnaround, I should say, a pretty key part of it. And like in this moment in time, we need him because that's just how it is. And I think it's okay to appreciate that while like understanding long term, hey, look, like this is not the guy for us that's going to take us over the top. Now, will Leon Rose in the front office agree with us? We will see. But like, for right now, I think it's okay to just enjoy the season for what it is and enjoy like, I mean, when's the last time the Knicks had legit 9 guys that were all good NBA players minimum? Like, that's not normal. That's not normal for most teams. Like you look at OKC, awesome. They're having a great season, right? I look at their bench and I'm just like, is Jalen Williams not J-Dub, other Jalen Williams? I'm like, is he good or does he just get minutes because they don't have a 5 other than Chet? Like, I'm not trying to shit on them. It's more just like there's a difference between having drafted a lot of players and having fun prospects and actually having 9 legitimately good NBA players, most of whom are pre-prime or just entering their prime. Aside from Julius and Hart, everybody else is either pre-prime or entering their prime. That's a really great spot to be. And like, I don't know what this team is going to look like in a year or 2 years, whatever, but I don't think it'll look the same. So enjoying this team for what it is and enjoying the depth we have and the quality pieces we have, and that, Tibbs can mix and match more. And, I wish he would do it more, but like, that he does have these options. And, I just think it's like really nice to root for a team that's good.
Yeah, I think that's all extremely well said. It's a very beautiful message about enjoying the journey and not just looking towards the end result. But I would say everything you said is well taken and totally accurate. I mean, that Toronto game, that was like my most fun game of the season and my most fun game since the playoffs last year, since any of the Brunson eruptions. And I also thought that was specifically Julius Randle. That's the best I've seen him play in a really long time, going back to last year, in my opinion.
He was just so under control in that game.
So under control, the facilitation, not speeding himself up too much, kind of knowing exactly what he wanted to do. Even his decision-making was crisper and quicker than I've seen it in a really long time.
Destroyed Siakam. I thought he just
absolutely destroyed Siakam. Used OG, like, I know you're not the biggest OG fan. That was not a good game for the OG crew that want to bring him here, because Randall completely dominated that matchup. And we saw a weakness clearly of OG is his strength is not up to par with some of the strongest 4s in the league. And Julius Randle is absolutely that. So I personally, I largely agree with you. At the same time, I'm much more neurotic than both of you probably, and along with that comes that I'm just always thinking about the future. I'm always thinking about the future. I'm always thinking about what's next. I'm always thinking about the end goal and how can we get there, and are we on track to that? So I think it's helpful for me to think about taking a step back from that sometimes and just enjoying the moment, but it is my nature to gravitate towards that.
You're a front office guy. I'm like a coach. I'm a coach guy. I'm like, no, we just got to live in the moment, guys.
Exactly.
What we have in this locker room. No, but honestly, I say this because I'm a Bills fan, and so like the last 3 years, I would say it's like every season is just like, well, if we don't win the Super Bowl, this season's fucking awful. And this season has been the most frustrating season for so many reasons that I talked with Geoff about this last week on Strickland NFL. But comparing that to like where the Knicks are like, they're trying to be good. So this is not like they can't like, finish the season in the play-in and like everyone's like, oh, well, it's still a good season because this team is young. Like, no, it's not like that. Like they're trying to be good. So there is some pressure there, but like, it's not, I don't think anybody really is under the impression that this team's like, well, they got to contend, right? It's like, no matter how many times ESPN wants to be like, well, what's their ceiling past the second round? I'm like, I'd love to get to the second round again. That'd be fucking great.
Do you think there's added pressure on the Knicks to do more when they make some of the decisions they make, though? I do think that there's some validity to that point, and I try to toe the line between you guys' perspectives here, because I understand the macro of, well, what's the big picture? How do these decisions that the Knicks are making, how do the results that are happening impact the big picture? But at the same time, this is easily the most enjoyable stretch there's been to be a Knicks fan in, like you said, since arguably '99. And so you want to try to keep both those things in mind. But I'm gonna blame you. You brought it up, not me. So I'll just say it. When you have a guy like Emmanuel Quickly averaging 24 minutes a game, I don't want to bring up Obi Toppin, but Obi Toppin did what he did in New York, and then now he's in Indiana with an amplified role, and he's immediately thriving in a different scenario. And he couldn't do that in New York because the Knicks made short-term decisions that they thought were for the best for the short term. So don't you think there's probably, like you say, this team can't win a championship, they shouldn't be expected to contend? But if that's the case, how can they justify making some of these decisions, like playing Emmanuel Quickly 24 minutes a game? Do you think there's any validity to that?
No, I mean, look, I think there's plenty of validity to that, but I would say that one, I would bet money that by the end of the year, he's averaging over 26 minutes a game pretty easily. I think that there is a difference between the front office handing Tibbs tools and how Tibbs deploys them. Like I strongly believe if the front office had their druthers, that like Emmanuel Quickly would play more. I really fundamentally believe that. Now, I'm also of the opinion that like you have to let a coach. Like you can give him suggestions, and they clearly have, and he's clearly taken a lot of them on board. You can see it with like the 3-point shooting, even the stuff like this year with the generating more turnovers, right? Like I don't think that was a decision that was made lightly or without like real discussion. Like, hey, this is a way we think we could improve our defense. Tibbs has notoriously throughout his career not been like, that's just not his concern. And so, like, I think when you see stuff like that, you're saying, okay, this is a collaborative approach. This is good. Now, as far as like, Quickly's minutes and how does that, shake? I mean, you can even say the same thing about Grimes, right? Like Grimes is kind of under pressure now to deliver because there is a DiVincenzo, right? Like there is a guy that you signed. And like, I mean, I told you this before the season. I was like, the guy I'm more worried about than fucking Quickly is Grimes. Like he's the guy I was always more worried about. And I still am, because I think it's easy to look at these last two games and be like, oh my God, Quickly loses minutes. We also know that he closed the Miami game, right? And I know where you're going to go with this, Geoff. So let's not do the minutes cap thing. The point is, like, to me, Quickly is a guy who has scenarios on this roster where he gets minutes and he plays a really important role and he is a key piece. And like, I see that for him, right? I really worry about Grimes because I'm just like, he's a very good point of attack defender. His defense to me this year has dropped off a bit. His 3-point shooting is not that great, in my opinion. Like, he's very good from the left corner. If you look at the rest of his shot chart, not very great. Like, consistently. Like, he's not a great above the break shooter. The right corner, for whatever reason, escapes him. Like, mid-range doesn't exist. At the rim, very little volume that he gets. This year, he's kind of been attacking the rim like a headless chicken, even when he does put the ball on the deck. He's not confident with his handle. Like, so to me, a guy like Quickly, I'm more worried about, like, will Tibbs use him in the way that I would like him to be used, in the rotation I'd like him to be used? I do think stupidly or like backwards or however you want to phrase it. Like, I feel like Tibbs pretty consistently throughout the course of a season eventually comes back to like, oh yeah, Emmanuel Quickly is really good. I should play him a lot of minutes. It's great. I'm a genius coach. I don't know that he's there with Quentin Grimes because I've just never suspected that he feels that way about Grimes. Like, I think he likes him, obviously. Like, I think he genuinely like, I would guess this is his favorite team he's ever coached. Just a bunch of tryhards that, like, our big controversy was Josh Hart saying that, he didn't feel like he was in rhythm. That was a huge controversy for a day, apparently. But, like, I don't know, Grimes to me, like, we know that with Tibbs, he loves aggression. He loves guys that will not hesitate to pull the trigger, right? More than anything. Like, you hesitate, that's your ticket out of the rotation, out of the lineup to lose minutes, whatever. That's the thing he hates. And that's why I think he never felt like he needed to give Frank any extended run, right? And I'm not saying that was a wrong decision, based on how Frank's career has gone. I mean, it was a wrong decision. Elfrid Payton's fucking awful. But, like, I get, like, that's the point, though, right? Elfrid Payton was terrible, but he was like, he did exactly what Tibbs wanted him to do, right? Penetrate, drive to the rim. I don't give a shit. Like, just keep doing that. And because he did that, he's fine. Quentin Grimes, like, before the season, do you remember that interview he gave during training camp? And Grimes was talking about, like, Tibbs, the other coaches are in my ear all the time, like, shoot the three, take shots, like, be aggressive. And you're watching this year, and I'm like, I don't know what you're doing. Somehow his usage has dropped this year, which is unbelievable to me. And then you, like, just compare side by side, right? If we're gonna view, like, this is how Tibbs views it, right? Like, he views, like, DiVincenzo as Grimes, right? Like, that's, like, in his head, that's how he views them. If I'm him, I'm watching this, and I'm like, look, I get that Grimes doesn't get the ball a lot, but when this other guy comes in, even in the same lineups, all of a sudden he's getting shots up, he's getting threes up, he's involved, like, he's making things happen. And I think that's hard to ignore as a coach. And, like, I've never quite been enamored with Grimes. I mean, me and you have talked about this plenty. Like, I've never been enamored with Grimes the way that clearly the front office was at one point. And I think a lot of Knicks fans have been. Not to say that I like him. I think he's a good player, good prospect. He's going to have a long career. But he can't dribble. And you're playing a perimeter position. Like, there's just not a lot I can do with that. Like, I said this in, like, a pod last week or something. But, like, can you give me the KCP package? Like, can you give me the KCP dribble package? Because I'm not asking a lot here. And if you can't give me that, then we got problems. Because, like, you see the pressure this puts on other guys. Like, there was a play the other day. Julius passes it to him in the corner. It's wide open from three. And it's the left corner. That's his spot. He pump fakes, puts the ball on the floor, dribbles in 2 steps. There's like 6 or 7 seconds left on the shot clock. He chucks a grenade back out to Julius to top the key. It's like, and now Julius has to create something. And, like, you know what? I bet you there are possessions that you could probably find littered through the season where something that's happened. And my initial reaction in a lot of those in those situations probably been like, what is Julius doing? This is a terrible shot. Like, what? I can't believe this. I bet you if you look at a lot of this stuff, like, right now, you want to kill a possession, throw it to Quentin Grimes, because he's killing possessions right now. There's so many, and it's selfish. It is selfish. Like, it is selfish to not take shots a lot of times. Josh Hart was doing this earlier in the season. It was driving me nuts. If you're open, take the shot. Like, Tibbs talks about that all the time. We've all played basketball. Is there anything more frustrating than when you, like, pass it to somebody, they're wide open, and it's like, oh, sorry, dude, here's the ball back. And I'm like, I suck. So the fact that you passed up the shot and gave it back to me now is terrible for us and for me personally. But, like, he's doing this a lot. And I think it's just, I don't feel that way about anybody else in this team. Like, say whatever you want about RJ Barrett's struggles. That man has never struggled with the concept of pull the trigger on an open shot, ever. Like, and that has value. DiVincenzo, Hart is now back to, like, being normal, which is great. Quickly, Brunson. I mean, Randall loves to, like, pump fake, but then shoot the shot anyway. But, like, all these other guys are willing to take these shots. So, I don't know. I don't even know how I got here from what you asked me. But, like, in terms of the macro stuff, like, I think there's always casualties. Like, you're always, like, you don't win a championship with, like, a low body count. You're always going to have dudes that, yeah, you didn't maximize them, or they end up going somewhere else and they have a better crew, like, they do better there than they did here. You have to take risks. Like, yeah, would it be great if the Knicks were just like, you know what, we're not going to sign Dante DiVincenzo. We're going to run back this team, and we're going to give Deuce McBride minutes if need be to be the 9th guy in the rotation. And, like, I get that. I also think, like, once you hit second round, right? Okay, there is pressure to at least maintain that or attempt to maintain it and keep your standing in the East. You know, like I think you could lose in the first round to like, you know, if you lost to Philly in round 1 in 7 games, is that like a step back? Sure, but I don't think that's a real step back. That's like, okay, seedings work however they work. But like the Knicks, I think it's very important that they keep their place at the top of the East. I think there's real value to consistently valuing winning. Like we see this with Miami. There's a reason why they're like guys are always open to going to Miami because they know they have good management. They know every year they're trying to win games and they're trying to win as many games as they can. And they know that if they go there, they have a coach who probably will figure out a way to like get value out of them. And more than that, like it'll be one, you get to live in Miami. 2, you get to play competitive basketball on a team and an organization that is knitted up top to bottom in line and knows exactly what they are and exactly what they want to do. And I think the Knicks in the last basically year, since they kind of made that rotation change last season, I think they have become a much more unified organization. I think they have a very clear identity now of this is like, what is Knicks basketball? This is what it is. We are going to play not at a fast pace. We are going to win the possession battle. We are going to beat the shit out of you on the glass. We are going to value high value shots, right? We are Morey ball nerds. That's what we do here. And now you've added an element of like, okay, well, how can we turn teams over without taking huge risks? Fred Katz just wrote a piece today that was really good about this. And he talked about how Jalen Brunson's lapping the league right now in like offensive fouls drawn. So like, this is I think it's a smart organization. I think they're aligned. And, you know, like think about a year ago, we're sitting here talking about like, oh, the front office versus Tibbs, like what's happening? And now I feel like, to me, I don't care if there's some macro risk that I haven't fully calculated about signing Dante DiVincenzo or trading for Josh Hart, because to me, those are 2 players that you acquired that demonstrate to me an understanding of like, what are we as a team? What does our coach value? And does this player make us better? And is this cost? Like at this price, does this make sense? And they have both those acquisitions to me nailed that, you know, like, and, you know, you can say Obi Toppin's a casualty of this, right? I much prefer having Dante DiVincenzo on this team with how we play, with what we are going to be, than Obi Toppin. Obi Toppin would never be Obi Toppin here. And we knew this. So at some, like, you make mistakes. Every organization does. You have to find ways to adjust and adapt and move on and keep moving forward. You know, because you know, I know you're not saying this, Geoff or XJ, but like, to me, people view this like this stuff as like, oh, well, what's the point of this move? It's not elevating or ceiling. And it's like, yeah, look, I get that. But like, you're trying to keep yourself at a floor and strike when that ceiling raising move becomes available. And to me, it's like too cut and dry where I see people being like, well, what's the point of this team if we're not going to win a championship? We should blow it up and like tank forever. And I'm like, yeah, dude, we could be the Pistons in 3 years. That's awesome. Let's do that. Like, you know, it's okay to just appreciate a good basketball team that maybe doesn't have a championship ceiling yet. I agree with you that at some point when you make the choice to value winning, you have to make a move that gives you that championship ceiling, for sure. I don't think they're there right now. I do think they have some time, but I do feel like this summer feels like a pretty critical tipping point one way or the other.
Yeah, I just want to say, you know, this is why you get ShwinnyPooh on your pod, because that was a tremendous state of the union for the Knicks season so far. And I mean, I think it's all right. I think that, I don't know, I was thinking of this analogy. It's probably really stupid, but when you were talking about the Knicks really having an identity in terms of who they are and what they do and being really, really clear about what their goals are and how they're going to win games, it made me think about, I don't know if either of you ever played like Yu-Gi-Oh when you were younger. When I was young, I played Yu-Gi-Oh cards. Okay. Anyway, you have
Geoff was gambling. Geoff was playing Hold'em.
Yeah, yeah, probably. Is that what you were doing at lunch in middle school, Geoff? Playing Texas Hold'em.
I went from Pokemon to poker pretty quick. Like
Yes, then the answer is correct. Yes.
Yeah, it was. Oh, there was like a wrestling stage. 99 to like I was like an Attitude Era wrestling.
Yeah.
Attitude Era wrestling fan. And then
But like cards, I'm talking about like card games, like in the lunchroom.
We would sit in lunch during like Attitude Era and have like wrestling drafts and debates and stuff like that. That's all we talked about.
Wow, I did
like
not.
super nerdy wrestling shit. Yeah. No, the amount I know about the Attitude Era, like remember a few weeks ago, we did the whole like I can recite the playoffs from every year from the last 12 years or whatever.
Yeah.
The shit I know. The shit I know about WWF Attitude Era would blow your mind, like just still to this day. And then yeah, it was poker from like 8th grade on. So that was no Yu-Gi-Oh for me.
Well, I did not play poker, and while I did watch wrestling and was an avid fan of the Attitude Era, we did not do mock drafts of wrestlers during lunch. We played Yu-Gi-Oh. And when you play Yu-Gi-Oh, there's some people who have a deck that is specifically like, let's say, a fire deck. It's similar to Pokemon in that way. And you can have a fire deck and like stack it and be like, this is the best fire deck in the world. And you'll do damage, but you won't be able to beat everyone because you just need to have that versatility. And I think that's kind of where the Knicks are right now. And I think that's okay. To all of Shwin's points, I think that's totally fine and probably more than fine. I mean, it's great, and it's great for us as fans of the team to watch them really be able to compete every night and never feel like they're just overwhelmed and way in over their heads. And I think that's awesome. And Shwin, you touched on this in multiple points, but you were saying basically all the different ways that the Knicks have scope for improvement. You mentioned a whole bunch of ways, and that basically foreshadows our theme for this episode, which is real or not real. Because in a small sample, you basically, you don't know what to actually pull away from it that's legit and sustainable. And so we want to dive into that real quick, just maybe for a couple minutes before we get into that. This is dropping on the day of the Knicks' first game of the in-season tournament championship bracket, hopefully first of more than one. It's going to be the Knicks against the top seeded in the East, Milwaukee Bucks. I just want to ask you, Shwin, and you, Geoff, both of you, what are you looking out for and kind of what are you expecting? And then I have another question, which is at the end of the tournament, I don't know if either of you have heard, but the league is going to have a selection of 5 players make the quote unquote all tournament team. So I'm curious if there's a Knick who's going to make that in-season all tournament team as well. So those are my questions.
If there is a Knick that would make it, I think it's Brunson. He just is a player who I think. Look, I think this game tomorrow is going to be like pretty intense. Like I think it's going to have like a playoff feel to it. Feels like the players and the teams are really into it. But I mean, we'll get a taste of it tonight with the 2 games that are happening tonight. So, I mean, this is going to be like the first time I'm going to be choosing regular season NBA basketball over Monday Night Football in a long time. So, yeah,
that means it's successful for the NBA. That's exactly what they want.
Right. I'm excited for this. I think it's going to be intense. I think
Shwin, I just want to say, at some point in our relationship, I'm going to get you to not have to choose. You're too high up in the sports world to be choosing between Monday Night Football and NBA. We gotta get you at least a second TV in your play.
It's not about I have a second screen, whatever. It's just like if I'm watching something, I can't do like the 6 different things going on. It's too much for me. Especially if it's like all NBA, I can do that, or if it's all NFL, I can do that. When it's like 2 different sports, I'm like, man, they really need to go for it on 3rd down here with 17 seconds left on the shot clock. Wait, what am I talking about here? But like, yeah, no, I think so. I'm looking forward to that. And I'm looking forward to not just necessarily the Knicks, but really all coaches. I'm very interested to see how these coaches treat this game in terms of their rotations and their minutes and everything. Because personally, while I would be very specific in my message to the team if I were coaching them, like, hey, like we're treating this like a must-win game, blah, blah, blah. Like I would make it clear that we value it. I would still coach this with a regular season rotation in my mind, because I think this gives you an opportunity to learn some stuff about players and how they react to, like, again, it's a 1-game sample, so take it for what it's worth. But like, we saw Emmanuel quickly struggle offensively in the playoffs last year, right? Let's see how he reacts in a game like this where there are stakes. It's an elimination game. Julius Randle. I mean, forget quickly. Like, Julius Randle, we know, like, has been a nightmare in postseason basketball. And like, let's see how he reacts. He's also going against a matchup that he historically has not done very well against in Milwaukee with Giannis and Brook. You know, these are the things that I'm like probably I would be focused on as a coach, because I want to have as much information on these guys as I have. Like, Dante DiVincenzo has not been a great playoff player, you know? I'm interested to see how he performs in this situation. So like, those are the things I'm most interested in. And also, it would just be really nice if RJ Barrett could like have a decent shooting game again. That would be really fantastic for me personally, and for Geoff.
Yeah, no. I just want to say I expect the Knicks to win. I think I'm going into that game with, first of all, I think Tibbs is going to coach this game closer to a playoff game than Shwin is hoping for. He just seems like that.
I believe he will. Yeah, 100%.
I just think he's that type of personality. I could see Brunson playing over 40 minutes. I think Tibbs is going to go for it. I think he's a competitive guy, and I think, yeah, I think that he's going to coach this like a playoff game, and I think the Knicks are better than the Bucks right now. I know Giannis has been great lately. He's somehow, after a slow start to the season, already back in the top 5 of EPM, which is remarkable. Lillard's coming on. They're finding their way as a tandem, and they do balance each other out so well. In theory, they should be the best duo in the NBA. They just haven't figured out the surrounding pieces at all. And it really feels like a lot of times they're playing 2-on-5 out there.
They also like don't play off of each other enough, which I don't think is because they don't want to. It feels like a coaching thing. Zach Lowe talked about this on his pod last week, which I can't believe I haven't listened to a Lowe pod in forever, but I did listen to this one. But he said like they only ran like 11 pick and rolls together against Chicago. That was a game they lost in overtime to the Fighting Alex Caruso's, but like 11 pick and rolls for those two is a joke. Like, you know, what are we talking about here? That's
you have to imagine that somebody in that organization understands that with Brook and Middleton and Beasley spacing and Dame getting blitzed the way you have to blitz him when you set a screen for him, getting Giannis the ball going downhill, like that is an unstoppable option. You have to imagine that they know that is there for them, and they're just trying other stuff to see what other stuff they have. That has to be it.
I do want to say real quick, I mean, they are 6th in the NBA in offense, and I know we're measuring them against the standard where they should be like the 1 or 2 best offensive team in the NBA, but they are 6th in the NBA in offense, 2nd in effective field goal percentage. Like, they are really dominating in the half court in terms of their effectiveness as well. So I just want to say they're doing really well, even a suboptimal kind of strategizing.
Yeah, and Brook has looked good. Again, I was a little bit worried about him to start the year, but like he's picked it up the last few weeks, so I think that's a huge thing for them. Middleton, we'll see. I don't know. He does not look great. By the way, Geoff, Knicks plus 168 on FanDuel. Money line.
I'm in. I was in on the Eagles yesterday too, so I don't know.
So was I. Thanks a lot, pal.
Yeah, my bad.
I think the Dolphins took care of us.
One other buck I want to talk about is Malik Beasley. I think he's huge for them. I know I mentioned him a bit early. They just need as much shooting as they can have around these two guys. And if Beasley can be kind of what he profiles to be, but he's what do you always say, Shwin? He's the spacer that was promised or whatever. You know, like he's been promised to be a spacer for years, a 3-and-D guy, and he's never really fully come through. And he's getting 30, 35 minutes a night for the past week or two as their starting shooting guard. And I think if he can settle in as a guy you trust to take 6-7 threes a game playing off Lillard and Giannis, that opens things up for them. But that's going to take some time. Right now, with how the Knicks are playing and the Bucks still finding their way, and as Shwin alluded to, they're not even really running their optimal offense right now. I just think this is a game the Knicks should win, and I expect them to win. So that's my comment on the in-season tournament game.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I don't feel as confident about it. I think the Bucks, to me, seem like they're kind of getting their rhythm, especially offensively. I think that just the fact that Dame hasn't played at anywhere near the level he was offensively last year, like maybe a fraction of what he was doing last year, and they still have the number 2 effective field goal percentage in the NBA is pretty incredible to me. To me, like their weakness has been their defense so far this season. They do not turn the ball over, which is great. And they are okay rebounding team, and they don't really stop teams in the half court. So I think that's the opportunity that the Knicks have, but we'll see how it plays out.
The Dame Beasley backcourt's really bad, and like honestly, this is a game where I could just see Grimes minutes disappearing because like the advantage you have is against their backcourt, and if you can, like, I mean, that last game, there were a couple plays even, Grimes was one of Grimes' better games, but even in that game, there were a couple of plays where, like, he catches the ball, he has Dame, and he's just like passes it off. I'm like, that's food right there. That is like, that's food in the NBA. Like, Dame Lillard is not a good defensive player. Is great offensive player, amazing offensive player, but not a good defensive player. And, like, I'm not saying you got to attack him every time, but you got to attack him a time, a time has to happen.
Yeah,
So,
I totally agree with that because I always say that, I hate when opponents are able to hide their smallest and weakest guards on Grimes. And it's really frustrating because, Atlanta does this with Trae Young. Obviously, It's the first one that I think of. And I'm always just like, if Trae Young is going to hide on Grimes and be able to do that successfully, he almost can't play in those games. Like you have to have somebody there who can take advantage. And so I totally agree with that point. Yeah.
It's such a wild transformation too, because the Knicks overachieve in 2020, 2021, and then Reggie Bullock gets exposed because he can't do anything with Trae Young on him. And so they go out and get Evan Fournier because Evan Fournier can do stuff. Like Evan Fournier is a shooting guard that can theoretically do stuff when you hide your worst defender on him. And they're like, no, we need defense. And so Grimes was supposed to be the bridge between those two things. And now Grimes is like worse with the ball in his hands than Reggie Bullock was and less willing to shoot. It's like, yeah, Reggie Bullock playing 40 minutes a night was annoying, but at least he shot every time he was open. He
did shoot every time he was open.
But did you know that Quentin Grimes played point guard in high school, Geoff?
I've heard the rumor.
You haven't seen the ball is life footage, Geoff?